All right, hello everybody. Welcome to the Heady Livestream. I am your host, Eli Harrington, and tonight, as you can see, we have a wonderful guest with us, Miss Kathy Blume.
Hello.
Kathy, what's your title again for the people?
I am Production and Events Manager here at Heady Vermont, which means I come straight from the firm of Albot and Albot. You know, a little bit of this and a little bit of that.
That's right. We were talking before about how it's impossible to define one thing because everybody does everything, and
Right.
I think people have seen you on the Women of Weed live stream and hopefully have had a chance to meet you at some of our events.
I was actually the voice of God on the Women of Weed live stream. I wasn't on camera.
Oh, yes, you're right. You're right. Okay, so I guess this is your first official live stream debut. Wonderful. Well, we are going to talk tonight about recap of the Mary Jane's Women of Weed event, which I understand was a smashing success. And we're going to preview our upcoming Blue Dream CBD yoga event, which you are going to be teaching. So we will get into that. We've also got time for a special call with our friend Fran from Vermont Homegrown. So we're going to get into it. We put some notes in here so you guys can follow along at home.
A little bouncing ball.
And we're even going to shout out a sponsor tonight during the live stream. And next week we're going to have real video. It's going next.
We're getting there. We're about to hit the big time. We're close to the sort of
centerpiece. We've got a centerpiece now.
Small to medium time. We're keeping our own time on the phones, right? But this
one's on the house, Citizen Cider. Don't worry. All right. Well, let's start. Quick New England update. If you guys are following Heady Vermont, you've been getting the weekly roll up. This is an awesome feature. Our editor, Morgan, has been doing a great job curating this, trimming and harvesting to get us kind of the best nugs of information that we share with you guys. So these will be in the weekly roll-up coming up, our New England update stories. 2 quick hitters. One happening today in Massachusetts. They've been talking about social lounges, and they have been talking about delivery. They've been talking about a lot of stuff, mostly in the last 6 months because they dragged their feet on the medical program for a long time and then implementing this. So there's a lot happening in Massachusetts. It's all happening really fast. And the latest news is that it sounds like there is a little political deal made and they are not going to have lounges and they are not going to have delivery services, at least in the beginning.
So that takes all the fun out right at the beginning of the situation.
That takes a lot of it out because the lounges, they were going to be the first people in the Northeast, in the East Coast period, to do social lounges, and they made a lot of really good points about it. I think that the state, which has really been resistant to the law overall and not really sort of been engaging, like you said, until very recently, in kind of full force, is nowhere near ready to tackle all these issues, which I think is partially why we here in Vermont and everybody in other states needs to be pushing the envelope because there are so many things that come up.
What do you think their fear is? Are they just overwhelmed with information, or do they feel like it's going to somehow change the culture of the state?
Well, I think there are a few things from talking to our friends in Massachusetts and from paying attention to what's going on. They let this huge backlog develop in the medical program. And when they passed the citizens' referendum in Massachusetts, part of the deal was that at a certain date, there were going to be sales to any 21-year-old adult through the medical dispensaries. So if you had a dispensary license, you've been frustrated because you haven't been able to get your paperwork through and you haven't been able to open up, you had a fail-safe that said, if this referendum passes, then I think it was June 1st, 2018, automatically you will be able to sell it. So all of a sudden, the state realized, okay, crap, now we have to register all of these dispensaries. And right now, I think there are 13, maybe 14 now that are open for business. There are, I believe, another 50 that are actively have been approved and that are in stages of final completion.
So it's basically a bureaucratic issue.
And then there are, yes. And then, here we complain about having so few dispensaries. In Massachusetts, again, they've kept it so tight for so long that now they have to register something like 100 in the next however much time. But I think it's instructive for every other state that you can pretty much count on when there are tax and regulated sales to all adults over the age of 21. They're going to come through the dispensaries, at least initially. I think that's what we're learning from these regulators, is that there's so much information for politicians and policymakers who Maybe they've done some medical, maybe they haven't done any medical, but now they need to figure out how we're going to sell this like it's a liquor store, and they're really only comfortable with, okay, if that's the model, then we have X amount of locations, and that's how we're going to start. So there's a political choice that you have to make, at some point when you want to move things forward. And from the report that I read on Mass Live, it seemed like if they didn't do this, they weren't going to have sales on July 1st. And that getting sales on July 1st is a deadline that's a priority. So if you have information about what's going on in Massachusetts, you can drop it in here. Or if you have questions about Massachusetts, we're following it closely, and we will have more updates coming in Mass. There's a lot going on, so stay tuned for that. Other quick thing I wanted to mention in Maine, which I thought was really interesting, is they are looking at employer protection laws where you could not be forced to take a drug test for marijuana. I didn't know if you saw this, but this is something that I wanted to ask you about, because we interact with a lot of different kinds of people, and this is a question that always comes up, is what's going to happen with drug testing if the laws change. So in Maine, they're kind of the opposite end. They're I think where us in Massachusetts want to be legally, where they're going to expunge records and get rid of drug testing requirements for marijuana. So it doesn't apply to all professions. I think if you're dealing with heavy machinery, not heady machinery, like this is heady machinery. We'll talk about that. If you're dealing with heavy machinery, there are still restrictions that your employers can make. But this is another policy question, and you've got a lot of background in policy that we'll kind of talk more about. But it's one of these things where in Vermont, employers are going to be able to set whatever rules they want, at least initially. And maybe eventually we can get to where they're at now in Maine, where we can start to bring things back around. But
it sounds like part of what we're constantly dealing with is still a level of fear and ignorance about what cannabis is. Certainly when this is going to come up a little bit later in Livestream when you're going to talk about saliva testing, but the whole issue of the amount of THC in your bloodstream, regardless of when you last imbibed. Right. So you could have done it a week ago, still had stuff in your bloodstream, not impaired at all, but if the people who are making the rules around all of this don't understand the science and are operating based on fear of what might happen, fear of the accidents that could happen, or fear of the mistakes that might get made, all of a sudden there's a level of sort of like base of skull reactionariness that makes it hard to make much more educated, conscious.
Well, and this is a good message for advocates, right? And let's talk about saliva testing and advocacy, because I know that's a lot of who tunes in, and this is one of the big disconnects, right? What you believe to be true, what you know to be true, what you can express to a lawmaker, what you can convince someone to believe and then support, and then what you can get a majority of them to believe and support at any given time. Right? So, I mean, we look at it in real time and we say, all right, this is crazy, and you have to figure out where you draw these different lines in the sand and say, look, we know that we shouldn't have that kind of fear. And, same thing in Massachusetts. I would make the argument that, hey, a social lounge is a great idea. If you're worried about public safety and you're worried about kids, then give people a place where they can consume legally and safely.
Like a bar.
Like a bar, like a social lounge. You don't even have to involve alcohol, right? Imagine that. If you had a social place without alcohol, cannabis only. And you could say, hey, instead of worrying about your kids getting into your stash at the house, if you can go to the cannabis lounge, you have no reason for a house.
You can just smoke, be there, chill,
relax. Wow, what an argument, what a common sense argument that we could make. But as you and I know, that is not something that's not actually effective politically. Like, how do we get that common sense into effective political action?
It's funny because I just spent the last dozen years in the climate movement, and it's the same issue. There's what we understand about the science, what we understand about the basic mechanisms of what we're dealing with, and then there's individual response to the whole situation, which is polarized and politicized and not based in rational argument at all. And what we find in both cannabis and climate is that it's the individual narrative that's really powerful, and it's also crafting a really well-told story about what's possible. Yeah. Because I think most people can't envision what they haven't experienced unless they've been told a really detailed and compelling narrative about it. And so the story you just told about kids not getting into the stash at home, instead I'm going to stop off at the lounge and then I'm going to get a Lyft home, because I know we're pissed at Uber.
Yeah, okay.
I'm going to get a Lyft home, I'm going to ride home, ride share of some kind, public transportation. I think it's okay to bicycle if you're high, if you're, stick to the bike lanes, and make really good choices. And I think being able to tell that narrative, and one of the things that we've discovered on the site is the most popular pieces of information that we post are the medical stories.
Yes.
And certainly I think the medical patients and the caregivers who were able to go to the legislature and talk about their experience had more impact than almost anybody else, because they're saving their own lives with this, and it's very, very real for them. And it's a life or death situation which doesn't exist for just about anybody else.
Well, and so I can't believe how well you set this up, because it's a good chance for us to talk about new grassroots, right? Yeah. So here's the question. How do you get those voices and those stories to representatives, and then how do you make sure that they have an impact? Right. Somebody like Vanessa, who shares her story and whose experience could be instructive to a policymaker, we put it out here, we share it, but if you're another individual, this is a possible tool. So we're going to talk a lot about new grassroots next week, the week after that, the week after that.
Ongoing.
Probably like for years and years and years after this. I think the whole world's going to be talking about it at some point, because I really love the technology. But I thought maybe this would be a good place for us to kind of preview what we are doing with new grassroots. And you have been working a lot with Ben directly. So this would be maybe a good chance for you to kind of give people this is your test. Can you give the elevator pitch of
2 minutes,
new grassroots? Well, kind of maybe just in the framework of what we're talking about, taking people's voices. I got a bunch of emails from patients in Vermont who sent them to representatives, senators, and it sounded like we're heard, right? But that probably has more to do with them being known individually. For everybody else, how do you get involved so you're not just shouting into the void? Right,
and I think that's the fear. Well, there's a lot of fear around all of this, I think, which is a big part of the problem, because people get passionate about things, but no one's trained to be an activist. You come up because you've got something that you really care about, you're passionate about it, but there's there's an art to it and a protocol and ways to reach your people. And how do you keep track? How do you maintain transparency with your legislators? So we were lucky. We had people who wrote their legislators send us a copy of the email that they sent or the letter that they sent, so we knew. But we don't know everybody who's out there.
Right.
And so I think there's two big challenges that Ben Brown and New Grassroots are trying to overcome. One is the difficulty of keeping track, both for us and for the legislators, about who gets in touch with them. Right. And the other is that people are shy. It's really hard. I mean, I've been at this for years.
It's hard at any issue, right? I mean, you're out here advocating for climate change.
Right. Yeah.
It's a lot different than the right
trying to save the planet.
Me to smoke pot at night.
But I feel almost equally passionate about the right to smoke pot at night, and to make the call in particular, because we know signing petitions is not that valuable. We know that emails are okay, but the single most powerful thing you can do is make a phone call. But people get scared because they're afraid that they don't know enough, or that whoever they talk to on the phone is going to get mad at them, or you're going to have that Opie moment where you go from a really smart, well-educated, informed person to a total blithering idiot. And we've all done this, either calling our legislators or calling the person that we have a crush on. And it's really hard to maintain your dignity when you're scared, when you're on the spot in that moment. So what Ben Brown and New Grassroots have done, I think, is absolutely brilliant. There's a website. And
we're going to preview this all on Heady Vermont too. We've done a whole. You guys have done a ton
just sit back and listen, because there's a ton of this coming up.
Yes.
So we send out an email. We're like, all right, there's this, saliva testing bill. We think it's wrong, and what we want you to do is call your legislator. So you go to the site, you get the talking points, and then they give you the capacity to leave a voicemail message for your legislator, which then gets forwarded to them. You never have to talk to a live human being.
Right.
And I think for those of us who are secretly far more introverted than we would like to believe or admit, It's a huge relief. You know, I was on the board of 350 Vermont for a long time, and we had a job as board members at one time to call our supporters, people giving us money, thank them for the money, and tell them there were buses going down to New York for a big march, or DC. So it was just thanks and information, and it was still hard to make those calls. There's something about interrupting somebody that you don't know, it's awkward, and what New Grassroots does is it does a total end run around all of that stuff. And all you have to do is look at the talking points, make the call, and you can then trust that this is going to be sent to your legislators. And then the cool part is you can share it on social media. So,
and you can let us know too. And so you can say, hey, you know, myself and 3 of my friends who all live in this same, you know, town, we all called our representatives.
You can have a phone bank.
We can track that.
Yeah.
And that's when you tell us. Then if you don't get a call back or an email back or response from somebody saying, hey, we heard you, that's when you tell us, you know, and that's when we follow up at the State House, or that's when we, you know, call this person and say, hey, we saw that we've got proof. I can play the voice messages if you'd like that people sent in to you. You know, and we know that we're tracking what's happening. So like you said, I like the technology spin on it too. There's the tracking, and then there's the part of people, whether they're introverted. I see this as a great tool for people who are maybe, let's say, the Gen Zers, right? I mean, I'm a millennial, you know, at age 30, so like barely. All these people underneath me, not Sean Simonetti, our awesome producer, not him, he's awesome. But a lot of the people younger than us are uncomfortable talking on the phone, because they're used to typing and they're used to texting. And I've seen it. It's with every intern I've had for the last like 8 years that I've been working with interns. It's less and less comfort because they never had to call and say, "Hey, Mr. McCabe, can John talk?" You know, and my friends' parents used to mess with me. I'd call them up and say, "Hello, is John there?" And they'd say yes. They wait, and I'd say, okay, can I please talk to him? And they'd say, oh, yes, of course you can. Here you go.
There are those of us who grew up in the era of landlines when there were no cell phones, and we were forced to talk to everyone about everything because there was no other alternative. And we've come a long, long way technologically, but we've certainly lost the facility to communicate. You know, on the device in a person-to-person sort of way. And the thing is, when you leave a voicemail message, they're hearing your voice, they're hearing your passion, they're hearing your fear, they're hearing your resolve. And that has a stronger impact even than a letter.
Well, and you can be, and you know, it's a one-way delivery too, right? So if you're somebody who maybe is a little bit nervous about sharing your identity, you know, you don't want to bump into this representative and see them at the store, or you don't want to get on the phone and have them ask you questions. Well, why do you smoke pot? I didn't know, you know, Fire Chief Kathy, I didn't know that you were in support of this. I wouldn't have guessed. You know, if you're delivering the voicemail, you can practice what you want to say, you can rehearse it, you can write it down. You know, you're delivering your best sort of version of that message, and you don't have to worry about, like we said, maybe the uncomfortable.
Yeah, no, I think it's a really great system because rather than trying to force people to get over their stuff, we're giving them a way to just not have to deal with it at all. And, you know, path of least resistance, because life is hard enough and the work that we all have to do is hard enough. And I think that's the challenge when you're doing advocacy stuff is there's this thing that you really care about. And the chance for things to go sideways is high. You know, we could have this awesome legislation and then have some whack job in the legislature come in with an amendment that somehow manages to get through. Not that there are whack jobs in the legislature. Everyone there is sane as can be. But, you know, there's always a chance that something's going to go awry. And so it's hard to invest that much of your emotional life and your intellectual life and your passion and your free time into something that, you know, you might not get. And I think that's sort of secretly what's also challenging about being a citizen advocate.
Well, and you got to put yourself out there. And, you know, I mean, I once walked out of the State House being like, holy cow, this happened. You know, like once.
But you never know. The legislature passed a no school bus idling bill because a group of middle school students heard how environmentally destructive idling is. And they started sending postcards to the legislature. And I remember Chris Pearson told me this story. He said he got this postcard. He said, oh, that's cute. That's never going to happen. But they got training and they showed up at the legislature and lobbied their representatives and their senators. And kids are crack for people in the legislature because they're mostly grandparents. And they managed to get this bill passed. So there is power in the individual, and someone like a school kid who might think that they had the least amount of power at all,
right.
they're too young to vote, all that kind of stuff. What do they know? We're certainly seeing the kids from Parkland in Florida.
This seems pretty timely.
They're rocking it, and I feel like this is a genuine historical moment that we're seeing.
Yeah.
So if the
but
kids,
again, a lot of it's technology, right?
Yeah.
That's that key ingredient, and not just technology for the sake of like look at my cat, or look at these adorable puppies every single Monday on the Heady Vermont Livestream,
right?
And on the Instagram page every day.
They're media savvy. They know
Right.
how to work it, and
Right.
it's impressive. It's
Right.
really, but that's to say, I think the most important lesson is that everybody has a voice.
Yes.
And that everybody's voice is valid and important and significant, and that means you, whoever you are, listening. And
well, I have a great and timely example. The individual who I'm going to call up right this second.
Yes.
His name is Mr. Fran Janik.
And friends, part of the reason we've gotten as far as we have.
He is, and we'll see if we can get a hold of him. Let me try. I'm going to try Fran one more time. So part of why we're talking to Fran is that we've got a local Vermont political update. I'm going to be in the State House tomorrow. I'll put on my fancy hat, a shirt and tie.
Right?
Yeah.
Are they going to match?
Yep. Next step. Call in at headyvermont.com for all of the haberdashers and men's apparel companies out there that want to get on board. One of the things that we're really following closely is the medical bill. There's a bill called S216. We have been following it closely because there are a few different things that it could do. Some of which are positive, some of which could potentially negatively impact patients as far as restricting their ability to, let's say if you are a patient yourself and your spouse is not a patient, this bill would potentially say that you could only grow 2 plants per household.
Right.
So it would limit the number of plants per household, but that means that because you're a patient and you've paid your money and registered and gone through all of the nonsense that you have to do to get signed up, it would mean that the person you live with, in your case your wonderful spouse, would not be able to exercise his rights as an adult.
But also the challenge being that medical patients tend to need a higher percentage of cannabis for their treatment, and if it's reducing the number of plants per household, then you're reducing someone's medication.
Yep. And if anything, you know, the idea that legalizing it for adults would impede on patients' rights is really, really tough to imagine.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna try Fran one more time at the number he gave me, and maybe I think I just.
It seems to all come back around to social justice so often, and you know, the thing I loved about the Healthcare as a Human Right campaign is that it really is. We're saying that being a healthy individual is a human right, and if you're impacted in your health, that having quality, low-cost healthcare that someone's not making a profit off of.
Well, that's part of, I think, why so many patients feel so strongly.
Yeah.
You know, is because this is something that they're using as a therapeutic, solution for them that is not involving insurance. It doesn't involve, pharmaceuticals.
Relying on somebody else.
Right, exactly. It's something that you can do yourself, especially if you are able to make your own salves, if you're able to make your own tinctures, which a lot of patients do. And I know a lot of people who utilize the dispensary system, that's a big reason why.
And a lot of those letters that we saw people sent in that they also sent to their legislators, they said, cannabis saved my life. Cannabis saved the life of my family. This is having an enormous impact on our ability to live happy, healthy lives. And if this were not available to us, we would be forced back into the pharmaceutical system.
That's right.
We might have to take opioid-based medications again. We'd become addicted. And, that's a fundamentally unjust situation right there.
And I think, again, it's more people like these patients sharing their stories. It's more people like the people that we're profiling. And we would like to profile more of them. We're actually going to do a photo shoot here for patients. If you are comfortable having your picture taken, and you are a registered patient, you want to come here and share your story, we're going to do some profiles this Thursday night, right? I think at 6 o'clock.
Yeah, but if you want to swing by, email us, info@headyvermont.com, and we can organize it. But the idea is we want to take a beautiful portrait of you that's, you know, visually, picture's worth 1,000 words, that helps capture the narrative. And then also get your story. And we want to be able to share that because we know, like we said, that our Google Analytics tell us the medical patient stories are the most compelling to people. And ideally, we would love to do a traveling art exhibit of these beautiful portraits combined with a little bit of people's narratives and take it around the state so that this is part of what helps normalize cannabis as something beneficial and non-threatening. Yeah.
Well, and so speaking of that, I want to get back. I think what we'll do is we'll talk to Fran, we'll line it up, and we'll certainly be talking more and more to these guys. I want to kind of move on to the second half here. I don't want to stop talking about the medical because that is ongoing right now. I do want to just tell people tune in tomorrow because there's still some questions about what's going to happen with the updates. But I would encourage you to check out the Vermont Home Grow Facebook page. They have been, like I said, doing a lot of grassroots outreach and hearing back from senators directly. So follow them and a shout out to them for their advocacy work. Maybe we'll try to hop Fran back on at the end here, but I am conscious a little bit of time, and we are going to do this next week and every other Monday and every other Monday after that.
And we have a product that we have to highlight because it's so fabulous.
We do, because we have got a special sponsor tonight. And you guys are going to be seeing more of this. You may have seen this already. I'll start with it right here. You've seen it on the desk. So, Sean, are you good and tight here?
Yeah.
All right.
I love this.
Perfect.
So much.
This is my favorite. So this is made by IASO Goods. That's IASO Goods. They are a super high quality engineering, design, manufacturing, prototyping, and they have been working at this for decades. Not at this necessarily, at a lot more sort of fancy high level stuff. Took an interest in cannabis and supporting medical patients and said, let's start by doing a grinder, learn what we can about cannabis, work with Heady Vermont, and then from there we'll expand and take our abilities to design, prototype, manufacture, and expand and see if it's something that people are harvesting hemp might need. But this is our first sort of product that we've done with them, the Heady Vermont grinder. This is 100% stainless steel. The weight is by far the first thing people notice, in addition to this beautiful, handsome box that we have
You know what I love about this too is that because there's magnets in the lid, it enables you to either take the lid off completely or just slide it to the side. And then it's lined with stainless steel too, which this is just beautiful and clever all at the same time.
And actually they do sell just the box alone. So if you want just the stash box, you can actually get this at iasogoods.com. But I wanted to hype this before we come out with the sort of fancy promotional video, which thanks to Jam Creative, we have a beautiful one.
Nice.
We're going to edit that up, but I want to note this because it is 100% stainless steel. That's a big deal because you don't cook with aluminum, you don't cook with plastic, you don't make medical tools out of aluminum or plastic because you do not want chips of metal inside of your body. So for me, when I'm thinking about using a grinder like this, or if it's a medical patient, you know, who's using something like this, you want 100% stainless steel, just like a medical professional, just like a chef would, just like a dentist would, to make sure that only what you're putting in is what's coming out the other side.
And it's easy to keep clean.
And so these are, you know, people pick them up and it's a no-brainer. You can tell the quality, it's outrageous. My other favorite sort of feature of this, if you've had a grinder, you've always dealt with the stickiness that eventually comes. Because this has the extra, I believe it's called labyrinth reservoir, I think that's patented technology, you do not get the sticking. You do not get the sticking. So, I have got a heads up for any of you that are watching on the live stream. We have these on headyvermont.com. I have actually talked to IASO Goods, and because they are such big fans of the live stream and supporters of us, I have got a 20% off coupon that you can use. So I'm going to drop that in right here. You can share it with folks if you'd like. You're going to have to tell them to go back and look at the live stream. But I've got a coupon code that's going to give you 20% off that I'm going to drop here in the comments. Later on, I'll probably delete it. So check it out. Take some pictures. Go to the Iaso Goods website, IASOGOODS, iasogoods.com, and visit the Heady Vermont section if you want one of these special custom Heady Vermont ones. You really want to show out? HeadyVermont.com/products. There we go.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's gorgeous. It's fun to play with.
It really, really is. And like I said, we've got there's so much more beautiful, high quality video that we have coming out. Yeah. But I like this because it's actually functional.
Yeah.
And I don't just want to show the fancy, super finished product. Show people that this is something. And this one here, it has been tested extensively. We take our jobs very seriously here.
We're doing it for you.
I put a bunch of CBD, through here because I figured it'd be a little bit more resiny, and it's still working great. So
it reminds me of something that you would find in the MoMA gift shop.
Yeah.
Something that's really beautifully designed and form and function and aesthetics all in sort of equal proportions.
I know. So it's talk about value. If you're somebody who has a product that you want to spotlight here,
seriously,
Heady Vermont. I mean, we don't really promote stuff that we don't believe in.
Yeah.
Which I think is part of what makes it easy, and what we try to bring to you guys. So, thank you again to Iaso Goods. Like I said, we'll drop this in. We do have a special coupon code for people, which I'll pop in there. But I wanted to get to. We've been talking all night, so I don't know if it's our featured interview.
Right.
But I wanted to, maybe we could kind of back up and you could introduce yourself a little bit. You've been peppering in sort of all these other things, and we've got your profile on the website, but maybe you could kind of explain to people what your experience has been thus far with Heady Vermont, because I don't know what the hell people think we do here.
Yeah.
And I don't know what you thought you were getting into, but it's been, 8 or 12 weeks now?
Yeah, it's about mid-December.
Okay, so maybe we can start there and then talk about Women of Weed and how you got involved in all this.
Sure. Well, like I said, I have a big background. Last dozen years or so, I was doing a lot of climate activism. And then a couple of years ago, my appendix exploded, and I ended up in the hospital with a serious case of sepsis. Almost died. And it's been basically a 2-year recovery process. It was Valentine's Day, that was 2 years. And I had to shut down my business and stop everything that I was doing, and cannabis was a huge part of my recovery. It helped deal with the discomfort of having had some major abdominal surgery and a lot of belly full of scar tissue. It helped me keep from going stir crazy because I had to just stay put and heal for months and months and months and months and months. And for a long time, it was pot and Netflix. That's all there was. But this past fall, as I was thinking, all right, it's going to be time to get back to work, I thought, what am I missing? What do I care about? And I thought, I want to do some writing, but I don't want to write a novel. I'm not a journalist. I have a background as a performing artist, so creativity is important. I want to be part of a team, but I don't want to be in charge. I want everyone to be smart. I'd like there to be some, something that's good for the world. Hopefully, if cannabis is involved, that would be awesome. And I somehow got onto Heady's mailing list, and I heard about the holiday farmers market, and I thought, I could volunteer for that. That'd be a way of getting kind of involved and meet people. And then the next thing I know, there's posted a job for someone to help with website content and events. And I thought, well, that would be like falling off a log. So it turned out I knew Monica because I am a wedding officiant and she's a wedding photographer. So
that's how you guys
We had worked together, although I didn't know it was her until I walked in.
Right.
And I spent years in New York working as an actor or trying to get work as an actor. And my dream audition, which never actually happened, was that I'd walk in the room, people would get up, give me a hug, offer me the job on the spot without my having to audition, and invite me home to dinner. And
which sounds like a great scenario.
It would have been beautiful. It would have never happened. But my job interview with Monica kind of worked out that way because she knew it was me. She knew who I was. So I walked in, big hug, sit down, chat, and then she texted you. You showed up. We chatted. Then you guys shot a video, which I art directed because you needed someone to help out with that.
Yeah, that's true.
We chatted some more, and then you handed me a vape. And that was like the best job interview ever. And it's been really fabulous being part of this incredibly intelligent, strategic, passionate team of people who are trying to have fun and do good work in the world in equal measure. And
well, thank you. I'm so flattered to, and a big shout out to Monica, and having this connection, because I think it has been so cool for us to see how all of our worlds sort of interact and where they, sort of cross paths naturally. And that's been one thing, we said getting into this, no matter what, have a good time, do things that we believe in, you know, and throughout the entire process, like so many great people that I've met through this, you know, like great people who I would just consider great friends, you know, like Kyle up in Creek Valley, you know, like super random, like all of those guys. I mean, Kyle Mace, the whole crew up there, like people who, when I was up in the Kingdom, you know, sort of I joke in exile, you know, this was like how I was able to connect with people. And, you know, it's been amazing for us having you be involved. And I want to talk, specifically, we want to give a recap of the Women in Weed, which I did not get a chance to attend. You've got a background in theater, in film, in radio, in production. So I guess I kind of want to get your feedback and your reaction to the event and kind of the scene. Shout out to Ashley at Elmore Mountain Therapeutics. They put on a great event. They had a ton of people at Maglianero's for the hemp showcase. And then the actual film itself. So kind of lead us through, what was that day like and what were your takeaways?
Well, you know, it was our first big, we had put together a whole new table display for Heady, so we got to show up and you know, share that with the world. There was CBD chair massage, and so hauling too much stuff out of the Heady basement wasn't a problem because they fixed my back right away. Maglianero has some really fantastic CBD chai, I highly recommend. But really what this was about was people who are women who are leaders in the cannabis industry in Vermont getting together to share their stuff. And so we got to see Diane and Cynthia from Farm to Spa. There were massage artists, there were the honey people, they're all really kind of fabulous folks, all getting together to share their stuff. There's a lot of people who came and were walking down the street, Maglianero regulars, happy to be there. The place was packed. And then we all took a break, got some dinner, and then went over to the Roxy to watch this film, Women of Weed, Mary Jane's Women of Weed. And what's the sort of interesting gimmicky part of it is that the woman who directed it and who kind of stars in this is a woman named Windy Borman, who had never smoked pot or used CBD in her life. She grew up in the 80s under the just say no, you know, pot is a gateway to hell, all that kind of stuff. And so she'd never tried it. But she heard that 37% of the leadership in the cannabis industry are women, which outstrips any other industry by far. And particularly for an up-and-coming industry, it's rare to see women in the lead like that. And certainly 37% is not half the sky, but it's way better than what you're going to see in, say, high tech. And
it's almost like this is kind of a next sort of level cannabis statistic where I want to give credit to Women Grow, you know, and know that we've done stuff with them for years, and seeing that sort of grow to the point where she would hear that statistic. It just a regular member of the public. And that's something we talk about as advocates, but that maybe people don't believe is that, you know, with this new industry, you don't have the same kind of, you're not coming in with the same parameters. Right? That's, I guess, maybe the beautiful freedom of this. And it depends on who you talk to. You know, one of my first assignments for Heady was to go review that marijuana documentary that was the Marijuana X.
And you know, what was interesting about that is all of the shots of people in the cannabis industry in that film were dudes with chin beards, neck beards,
and hats.
Oh my god! And you know, women with leaf pasties, and it was just people looking obnoxious. And what was beautiful about this film is that these were all passionate, intelligent, committed adults who have made a very conscious choice to throw their lot in the cannabis industry because they feel like good can be done. And in fact, one of the graphics I just love is this Women of Weed graphic, which I don't have any tattoos, but if I got one, it might be this. So one of the things that Windy Borman does is she starts to research what's up with this statistic. Is this true? What else is there to know about cannabis as a substance? And what she starts to make connections to are the fact that cannabis is an intersectional item. And certainly it's helping in the industry with gender parity because of all the women in leadership. It helps with environmental conservation because it doesn't take the same kind of inputs that a lot of other agricultural products do, which may not even benefit humanity as much as cannabis can. There's a social justice component to all of this because of the war on drugs, because African Americans and people of color in general have been significantly impacted, far more than white people have, and recognizing that lives have been ruined and communities who have been on the front lines of the drug war have been profoundly disempowered and torn apart, and that is a wrong, an injustice that needs to be righted and addressed and worked into all of the legislation and rules that are being generated in order to make legalization happen in an equitable way. And the fact that that's a daily part of the cannabis conversation. And certainly you hear, yes, a lot of white guys out west have made a lot of money off of this, and there's some disproportion there. But I think the social justice conversation is a much bigger part of the dialogue.
Well, and it sounds like what's cool about the movie, just from like the experience part, is that you're seeing this through the eyes of somebody who has not already drank the Kool-Aid.
Not at all.
Right? And this kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier. Like we know these things to be, like these things are maybe not self-evident, but believable or apparent.
Yeah.
Right? But the idea that she came in as like, is this statistic even real? And then discovered all this throughout the process, and then is sort of opening that Pandora's box for everybody else.
Yeah.
Did you get a sense of that this movie is kind of going to have and especially if it gets picked up and even distributed more widely, which it sounds like it could and hopefully will, but what do you think this is going to do for normalizing cannabis as a whole, maybe?
I think it's going to do a lot. Wendy makes a great every woman. You know, she's 39, she's a director, she's not, humongously successful, but she's making her living as an artist. She's curious, she's articulate, she knows how to ask questions, and she does a really beautiful job of finding the people in the industry to talk to, whether they're agricultural leaders or they're scientists or they're entrepreneurs. They might be legislators, they might be medical professionals. There are people who want to, there's actually one really fascinating person who's transgender, and she had wanted to go to medical school, but had things kind of fall apart towards the end of college and politically, and really wasn't sure what she was going to do with her life, and things really went south. But all of a sudden she discovered the cannabis industry, could get into the science of it, and be as much a healer and medical professional from this direction as she originally would have coming through med school.
Yes.
And there's a lot of that, and medical justice is a huge part of the conversation as well, and the fact that we just mentioned this before, that you can grow your own.
Right.
That you can do an end run around allopathic medicine, around the pharmaceutical industry, around the idea of healthcare for profit. That allopathic medicine, helped me a lot, saved my life. It's great in a crisis, but when you're dealing with longer term wellness issues, sometimes you just have to take much more control. And what we're learning, and what Wendy learns in the film, is that cannabis has a huge benefit for this. So what was interesting is that as she's shooting this, she shot for a year and researched for a year before she ever actually tried it herself.
Really?
Yeah.
So throughout the entire, because it's hard for me to imagine being in, I have been in those rooms.
Yeah.
And I didn't ever say no, honestly.
She really said no.
So she's just sitting there as like, no, I don't want to try that.
No. And she was a little scared, as you might be, and so she went to Colorado and she went to a dispensary and she bought a bunch of stuff, and the bud tender sort of walked her through the whole process. And then all of the women that she'd interviewed throughout the course of the film came over to somebody's house for a party. And they're all dressed in their, women of weed, their Puffrajet finest.
Yep.
And Wendy tries an edible, and then she waits about an hour, and then she tries a vape. And the funny part is when it hits her, she's talking, she turns and she stops, and she's been caught by the candlelight. And it takes her a while to pull herself back out.
She's just kind of like,
She's crossed the Rubicon. But I thought I was really moved by the whole thing. In particular, I was moved by Melissa Etheridge and her discussion of choosing to...
Our good friend Melissa Etheridge, two-time Vermont Tawana podcast guest, recurring guest Melissa Etheridge.
And she's a shaman.
Yeah.
She really is. And she was talking about how she's not going to go out and be an advocate so much as she is going to be an example, and that she's going to try to live an authentic life and show what's possible in terms of taking responsibility for your own physical well-being, your emotional, your spiritual growth, and that cannabis is a part of all of that. And certainly that's something that I really relate to, because I find I have some of the best spiritual insight with cannabis, It keeps me happy. It keeps me emotionally, well balanced, and it certainly has helped my physical recovery. So I think it's really true. And to hear other people say it, to hear musicians you admire say it.
Right.
And I was sitting next to Monica for the film, and we were both bawling through the whole Melissa Etheridge part. And she and I have had conversations about the fact that, Monica's a photographer, she's a designer, she hasn't been a CEO of an organization before. Yeah. And I know it's a bit of a lift for her. But after seeing all these women doing all this amazing work, at the end of the film, I turned to her, I said, I think you can embrace being CEO.
Yeah.
Because you're a pufferjet.
Yeah.
I'm not.
Well, and you as well, as employee number 3.
Yeah, although I love to be a single-digit employee. I prefer puffergist, though. Pufferjet strikes me as a little diminutive.
That's true. Yes, that's true. But, literally diminutive.
Yeah. So I think we're puffergists, not pufferjets. But, to be able to say to Monica, you are a part of this movement. You are a leader in this movement just as much as any of these other women are. That was a really cool moment for both of us, and it was really inspiring. And I think I think the film's about to get picked up by Netflix, which would
That's what I've been hearing. My contacts out in LA are all buzzing about it.
Would be fabulous. And Wendy is
fellow
really
live streamers.
Yeah, she's really super personable, and she's got great curly hair. I had to be impressed by that. So if it pops up on whatever thing you watch things on, go check it out because it's really charming and also deeply moving.
Well, and again, a good chance to give a shout out to Ashley from Elmore Mountain. Nutty Steph, she mentioned, was also there as far as women of weed locally.
Jacqueline was handing out chocolate heart CBD treats. That was charming. Yeah.
They had. Well, I anticipate we'll obviously more and more activity with kind of women of weed and the film itself. Yeah. Which people can go check out. It seemed, like I said, like the scene was just really positive.
It was really heartful.
Overall.
As much of what we're experiencing is, people are coming to this with great goodwill.
Well, and let's talk about a women of weed. Let's talk about a direct woman of weed doing a direct follow-up after this. Yeah. Right? Let's preview a little bit. We're going to take a leap. We're going to extend ourselves a little bit.
Yes, we are.
Stretch out a little bit. Quite literally,
yeah. Expand.
Expand into a new recreational activity for us. We're doing CBD yoga.
Yeah, we are.
This Sunday, March 4th, at a super special location, very near and dear to my heart and all my personal possessions, in Winooski, my town.
It's very generous of you.
I'm wearing my Winooski, my town t-shirt right now, so I think I'm about 30 yoga classes away from fitting into it.
Yeah,
so
okay, excellent.
Show that in the future, but
you're generous to share your space with all of us?
Yes, well, it's going to be a lot of fun, and I'm happy that we're going to have a great crowd. And let's talk about CBD yoga in general. Yeah. Your background as a practitioner, how you think cannabis and yoga can do, and may interact, and what are we going to do on Sunday?
On Sunday, so I have a 30-year yoga practice, and I have taught quite a bit in Chicago and New York and here in Vermont. I taught at Children Health and Fitness for years. I taught down quite a bit at Bristol Yoga, which is now the Village Shala, and I have incorporated cannabis into my practice on a regular basis. And it's funny, I remember in New York, I was doing this is actors yoga, so it was like 11 o'clock at night, and I would smoke a bowl and put on Joshua Tree and practice to U2, which is not normally, it's not quite Krishna Das, but
the edge isn't really what I think of, it
was really something.
A bunch of Irish dudes.
And I remember going to one of my yoga teachers and saying, is it okay for me to smoke and practice? And he'd be like, that's what they do in India all the time. And I've just been reading a bunch of cannabis history. In fact, Time Inc. came out with a newsstand publication that I just picked up, which is a huge history of humanity and cannabis, which is long and vast. And in India, it was considered both something recreational and medicinal. And also, they used it for hemp. And so there's a deep understanding of what this can do for you. So my experience and my feeling, what I'm trying to bring to CBD yoga, is that a lot of times when people practice, they come up to the edge of where their comfort zone is. You're doing a forward bend and your hamstrings are starting to get ouchy. And either you push past it because you think you're supposed to go to your full full expression of the posture, regardless of how much it hurts. Or you get to that edge and you have a fear response, as we often do with pain, and we back off.
Right.
And what we know CBD does for us is to help moderate our experience of discomfort. Not that we want people to be damaging themselves, but to be able to go to that first edge of sensation and not panic, to be able to have some distance between you and the physical sensations you're experiencing, hopefully allow you to stay calm and breathe and relax and stay present in the moment of that asana.
And I like that because, as you know, my sports background is like competitive athletics, and it's like, you know, and it's all fight or flight, right? You go to you go till you can't go anymore, and then you don't.
You drop.
Right? Yes, exactly, exactly.
And leaning in is generally how we're taught to deal with challenges. And certainly, as I was recovering from the appendix stuff, I learned that leaning in wasn't going to help at all in a healing process. At all. I had to let my body go at its own pace. And I think for those of us who have egos, as many of us do, and I don't know how many of you have practiced yoga before, gotten into a yoga class, and it's one thing to deal with your hamstrings or your back, it's another thing to deal with your ego and the voice in your head telling you how much of a screw up you are, and how if you'd only practiced every day for the last 5 years, you'd be so much farther along, you'd be able to get your foot behind your head, and you would be a better human being, and your life would be worth more. I have ruined so many yoga classes listening to that voice.
Yeah.
And I think the challenge is and this is true in meditation, it's true in the asana practice, how do we find friendliness with our practice? How do we find compassion for ourselves, pleasure and joy in the physical experience of our body, regardless of how flexible or not flexible it is? And so that's the other piece of what I feel like CBD and cannabis can do for a yoga practice is, as an athlete, you're taught to build up your muscles and build up your skills, but it's all very external.
Yes.
It's rare that we have an opportunity to go inside and feel the practice from the inside. Imagine if you had been throwing a baseball and you were so calm and so centered and so kind of in the moment of it, like in the zone, that you were able to experience the entire range of motion in what you were doing. That's a rare and beautiful thing.
I would have enjoyed it. I would have enjoyed my throwing the ball into the stands much more. It would have felt much
as opposed to a hardcore agenda that you had. You just had to win.
Right.
You don't have to win yoga. And so having an opportunity for people to back off ego and achievement and experience their practice from the inside and know that whatever their practice is, wherever their body is in space, that's totally okay. And the important part is presence and calmness, because yoga is an 8-limbed series of practices that are ultimately all designed to liberate the human spirit. And what Patanjali says in the Yoga Sutras is yoga is the cessation of the fluctuations of the mind. Right?
Can you just say that? Can you just say
yoga
that again?
Is I can't say it in Sanskrit, but yoga is the cessation of the fluctuations of the mind. And the fluctuations of the mind are what cause us to suffer. Life is pain. You can go skiing and break your leg, that's pain. Suffering is telling yourself what an idiot you are for having gone skiing and not having done the right thing, and now you're going to be, recovering for 6 weeks and blah, blah, blah. It's that voice of hostility that we all carry around with us. And to confront that voice of hostility in a yoga class, it's what the practice is about. Right. But it's still really challenging. And I feel like what cannabis can do for us in CBD or, recreational form is bring us to a state of friendliness and compassion so that we can enjoy ourselves.
Yes.
And that is what will allow us to open up physically anyway. We're not going to be carrying tension and judgment and fear and all that crap. So that's my goal with...
I feel so much more relaxed. I was excited for this event, but now I'm like... going to be spiritually fulfilled by this event.
I can only hope. And so Eli's roommate, Jeremy Skillings, is our CBD sponsor for this event. Hemptation USA. And when I went over the other day to check out what he had to offer, what he's doing is really interesting. He basically has a base of CBD that's all the same. It's like batter, like basic cookie batter or whatever. And then they've extracted the terpenes, which are what give cannabis and many other plants their scent. And it's kind of like an aromatherapy thing. So it's like if you had a base of coconut oil and then you added a particular essential oil to give it certain properties. So peppermint to lighten you up, or eucalyptus to help your nose open up, or lavender to calm you down, whatever it might be. Same with this. So we've got the basic CBD stuff, which we know is calming and we know is pain mitigating. And then the terpenes are what provide the quality of the experience.
Right.
So the reason why this is called Blue Dream Yoga is because I was testing out a bunch of his terpenes, and the Blue Dream just had the right feel,
the right feel, the right vibe.
Yeah, and so we've got Blue Dream and vapes for people to try, and then there's another, I forget which one it is, another one that's going to be in a salve, so people can, if you're particularly ouchy, you can rub stuff on. You can, and so class is this coming Sunday from 4 to 5:30, but you can show up at 3 for Hempy Hour.
Yes, we're doing a Hempy Hour before.
Yeah.
If you want to come in, I want to come and just talk more about the philosophy of yoga, the cessation of the fluctuation of the mind.
Yeah.
Is a quote I will not soon forget. Come over for Hempy Hour. We've got a member discount. It's only $10 for members. I think 15 for everyone else.
And
so
we have a limited amount of space, about 15 slots.
Yeah.
So you can get tickets at brownpapertickets.com.
Yep. And we will provide the CBD.
Yeah.
People are going to be provided with the CBD directly. And just to kind of reiterate, it's totally for everybody.
Yeah,
everybody's welcome. That's one thing I love about you go to cannabis events and you see people who are retired. You see people who got dreadlocks and tattoos and trucker hats and camo. And whether you've done a lot of yoga or whether you have done zero yoga,
whether you're a pothead or you've never touched the stuff, really, this is an opportunity to welcome everybody, which is great.
That's right. And so that's what I think. We're excited to try this out.
Yeah.
We're talking about doing some other, kind of events in this. I'll go ahead and plug the space and give a shout out to Tyler at Green Tea Glass. Check him out on Instagram. We might do some events in this space. So talk to me about private events, small scale events. Yoga, I think, is going to be the perfect way to kind of introduce people to this and get to do more kind of social, fun, meetup, recreational type events.
It's a great way to build community. Plus, when everyone's ass over tea kettle and plow, it's like it's a great leveler.
Well, and it's like how awesome is this kind of industry and scene that we could be connected through wedding experience and talking you specifically, and talk about your advocacy background, and organizing and theater and media, and action, and the fact that we can do all of this on camera, and that you can write. I dropped your story in the Smoky Ladies,
right?
All of this, and then we're talking about, hey, it'd be cool to do a yoga event, or that's something that should happen, and you bring up and saying, hey, I'd love to do a yoga event, like, oh, experience one of the most experienced yoga teachers you'll possibly find around. Just kind of have that also in the back pocket as a
by
skill.
the way,
so I'm just bragging on your behalf at this point.
But little of this, little of that.
It's really it's amazing, and I think that's kind of what we're trying to do. It's a little bit of everything. We do a little bit of everything, and we have fun. We do it for the right reasons.
Yeah, we're trying to make the world a better place.
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna do the hardcore political stuff. We're going to be out there in Montpelier tomorrow. I'm going to put on my suit and tie, and we're going to go, kick ass, and mostly just talk about what other people are doing, with advocacy. But then we're also going to hang out and have some yoga.
Yeah.
Drink some tea, listen to some music. If people have vinyl they want to bring over, I'll toss that out to people.
Right.
As well, yeah, we're really trying to represent the Winooski hipster scene well. So. I think we'll leave it at that. I'm going to do a little follow-up tomorrow from the State House, because I want to talk about what Vermont Homegrown is doing, but we've got a lot more coming. We'll be back next week, Monday night, and a big thank you to our guest, Kathy Blume, for
thank you to you.
playing you. It's an honor to be here, an honor to have you. Thank you to our hosts, Jam Creative.
Yeah.
Be moving into an even bigger space sometime soon.
So swanky coming up, but very excited about that.
Tonight's featured episode sponsors, Iaso Goods.
Yeah.
Stay tuned. We've got a lot more coming from them. And again, to Sean Simonetti, I dropped the tag in here. If you want to get in the live stream game, talk to Sean, because he is incredibly experienced, professional.
He's like the live stream whisperer. He's just really good.
And so that's part of why we're going to keep. I don't want to share the secret recipe with everybody here too much, but Sean's got bills to pay too. So. Thank you again to Sean. Thank you guys for tuning in. Leave questions if you have them in here. We will get to all of them eventually. But otherwise, stay tuned. I'll be back tomorrow from the State House with a little update, suited and booted. And in the meantime, you guys can all come say hello, Om, Shanti, all of these good things to Kathy on Sunday.
Yeah.
See you.
All right.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.